Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. I have some very interesting information to share with you guys today that actually makes me far more hopeful that the Conservatives can win this federal election. Previously, I knew there was a path to victory for the Conservatives, but I assumed it was far more narrow than I do today. There's a general theory in Canadian politics that's generally true that if the Conservatives want to beat the Liberals, they usually have to win the popular vote by 2 to 3 points to at least get a minority government, and to win a majority, they have to win by 5, 6, or even 7 points because of the differences in efficiency between the conservative vote and the liberal vote. It's not unfair. It's just that when you're the conservatives and you win massive landslide victories in ridings like Battle River Crowfoot, obviously that doesn't really mean anything in areas in the GTA or in southwestern Ontario. You have to win a riding to win a riding. And the Liberals have always been better at winning very marginal victories in the GTA, where they're picking up ridings with 35, 37% of the vote, whereas the average conservative riding is one with like 52% of the vote, which means that when they win the popular vote, it might actually mean they're just doing extremely well in Alberta and Saskatchewan, and elsewhere they're underperforming. But the 338 Canada simulator basically suggests that in this election, it may be the Conservative Party with the far more efficient vote compared to the Liberals. The Liberals may be just running up the score in downtown Toronto and Montreal and in certain areas of Vancouver and Victoria, but overall, they're actually having a lot of their vote recede in key ridings that they need in the GTA, southwestern Ontario, Manitoba, Calgary, Vancouver, the mainland area outside of downtown Vancouver. Their vote, in effect, is actually becoming more concentrated in areas that they were already going to win. So I want to take you guys through the simulator. It's extremely interesting information. But before I get into it, guys, just a reminder to like this video if you've been enjoying my federal election coverage. Subscribe to the channel if you've been watching a few videos and you're not yet a subscriber and you want me to pop up in your feed more often. And leave a comment about what you think. I will be putting a link to the 338 simulator pinned at the top of the comments so you guys can play around with the numbers. Tell me what you think the most likely outcome is going to be from your perspective. But now, let's get into it. So, this thing is basically only allowing you to slide the scales for each of the party votes based on what the general projections of 338 say the realistic range is. Now, I think it is still overestimating the Liberals because remember that right now, the 338 projections are including pollsters like Ecos Research that has the Liberals 16 points ahead, and I think there's that new one, MQD or whatever, out of Quebec that has them also similarly 13 points ahead. Guys, this is not a plus 13 election for any party. The Liberals or the Conservatives, if I see them more than 8 points leading in a poll, or even 5 points, frankly, I'm like, I discount that pollster because this is a knife fight election. This is not an election where someone's going to somehow win by 10 to 15 points unless someone just pulls their pants down and falls on their face on the debate stage. Although with Mark Carney, maybe that's not too much of a, that's not a small chance of happening considering how bad of a debater he is. So right now, this is just the default settings for the simulator. This is just based on what 338 thinks is going to happen based on all the polls aggregated together. So they have the Liberals at 43.7%, Conservatives at 37.5, NDP at 8.6, Greens at 2, Bloc at 5.8, and PPC at 1.5. They have a asterisk next to the total vote share because they note that all of the major parties, basically everything outside of parties that are only putting up 30 candidates or independents, all their vote in the 2021 election added up to 99.1% of the vote, the rest of it being independents or even smaller parties. Right off the bat, I'm just going to say I suspect that this election, all the other independents and all the other sort of small time parties are not going to get more than maybe 0.4 or 0.5% of the vote. This is a very divided election where it is clearly a horse race between the Liberals and the Conservatives in the vast majority of the country. And unlike Aaron O'Toole, Pierre Poilievre hasn't really done anything to tick off Conservatives. So, right now, based on the default settings, they're projecting a liberal majority of 196 to 121 for the conservatives. So, obviously, that is a liberal majority, 197 to 121. They're showing the NDP just keeping 8 of their seats, the Greens getting 1, and the Bloc Québécois getting 16. The PPC gets 0 because the PPC always gets 0. It annoys me, and maybe I'm just going to sidetrack here before I start adjusting with the meters here into what I think is a realistic election. I keep seeing PPC guys whine that they are not going to be included in the debate. Frankly, the Greens probably shouldn't be included in the debate either. But do you know why the PPC is not included in the debate? I know people are going to say it's because the debate commission changed the rules. Why did they change the rules? Because the rules didn't make any sense. Because the PPC, who got 5% of the vote last time, was just going to be able to, or was going to be allowed to be automatically on the debate stage, even though in this election, they actually missed an entire quarter of their country to have candidates in, and their support has fallen off a cliff. Do you really think just because the party got 5% of the vote, more than 4% last election, that they should automatically be on stage no matter where their support has shifted over time? Imagine the 2021 election if there was just something called the Anti Lockdown Party of Canada. Maybe I would have cast a vote for it because I hated Aaron O'Toole and the Conservative Party that he was running. They were basically just, 5% better than the Liberals, which made them not worth voting for. Let's say the Anti Lockdown Party of Canada gets 8% of the vote. And then next election, they're only around 0.1% of the vote, 0.5% in the averages, because obviously the purpose of the party has completely died off. Who even cares if they're running a candidate in every single riding? If there's no real prospect that any Canadian is going to seriously consider voting for them, why should they immediately automatically get a leader debate position when nobody is expecting them to even come close to winning a seat? That is the problem for the PPC. Doesn't matter what they got last election, they didn't come close to winning a seat in 2019, 2021, and they definitely aren't coming close in 2025, not even running a full slate of candidates this time. Anyway, so that's my PPC debate rant. I've wanted to make a standalone video on that for a while, but this will have to do a random rant in the middle of my simulator video. So I don't actually think the Liberals are going to be doing 43.7 in this election. I don't think they're going to be getting under 40% unless Carney's debate performance goes really bad. I think they're mostly going to be just, getting a little bit over 40. There are a lot of people, as we have seen in other polls, people who voted Liberal in 2021 hate the Liberal Party right now. So I would find it very hard to believe that the Liberals would go from 32.5% of the vote in 2021 all the way up to effectively 44. I could see them getting more around 41.5%. Good, really good improvement for the Liberals, and they're mostly benefiting from the collapse of the NDP, but they're not going to be in the mid 40s from my personal perspective. Okay, now let's move on to the Conservative Party, because I'll say right off the bat, 37.4 feels very low for the Conservatives. Really, again, it's only this low because of pollsters like Ecos and not Nanos as much, but Ecos and Angus Reid and MQD being mixed in that put the Conservatives sometimes all the way back at 33%. Does anyone seriously think that in this election, the Conservative Party of Canada is going to do worse, if not just around the same amount that O'Toole did when he was ticking off the Conservative base? Conservative base really likes Poilievre, and we know this because when you poll 2021 Conservative voters, most of them, the vast majority, like above 90% of them, are voting Conservative this time. Whereas with the Liberals, it's only like 82% are still voting Liberal in this next election. The only reason the Liberals have still been gaining is just from savaging the NDP and the Greens vote share, as well as the Bloc Québécois in Quebec. So I am going to just say off the bat, I think the Conservatives can get 40% in this election. I think based on good turnout, based on young working class men who usually don't vote showing up, I think 40% is extremely achievable for the Conservatives. Now, don't get me wrong. I think the Conservatives can do better than 40%. But at this current moment, without the debate having occurred, without knowing how that's going to shake up the race, let's just assume baseline with all the money the Conservatives have, 40% is like default. It's hard for them to underachieve that. Now, the NDP. So right now we are at 99% of the vote allocated. I'm just going to also say, and the PPC is going to be at like zero point 0.8. I don't see them doing anywhere close to what they did in 2021, and honestly, I don't see them even doing as well as in 2019. Polyev has basically done a lot of the things many of the people in the PPC wanted, and the only people who are really left voting for the PPC, some of them have good reasons, some of them really don't like certain positions the Conservative Party has currently taken. But the vast majority of people who voted PPC in previous elections have been satisfied with the move to the right that the Conservative Party has made. And many people who are left over are really just party insiders and purists who were repping the party in 2021. And it's almost become part of their personality to keep repping it. Okay, so I put them down at 0.8, and now only 98.4% of the vote is allocated. Again, I'll probably cut it off around 99.5 or 99.6. Now let's move on to the Greens. The Greens are actually fielding fewer candidates than the PPC, but they do have two incumbents. Do I think they're going to be at 1.9? They had 2.3 last time. 1.9 is probably fine for them because Elizabeth May and the leader of the party, her co-leader, are probably going to get enough attention to at least pump up their numbers in British Columbia and certain parts of Ontario in the southwest where their current seat is in Guelph. I'm just going to leave them at that. Maybe we can adjust that bit later. Now the NDP. The NDP is truly the wild card of this election. That is why some pollsters, I don't really trust them too much. I even like the way that Main Street Research does its polls, but when they consistently have the NDP at like 6.4% or 5% sometimes or 7, no, I'm actually going to show you something on screen that somebody commented at me on X as of just like an hour or two ago. This guy made the very incisive point that if you actually look at the NDP's track record over the past 2 decades, they have never done worse than 15.6% of the vote. Yes, Jack Layton was the leader back in 2004, but he didn't even have a seat in 2004. And so in 2004, 2006, 2008, they usually got from 15 to 18%. And even when Jagmeet Singh took over, he got 15.9 in 2019, and in 2021, he got 17.8. Now, is Jagmeet Singh going to do very well this election? Heck no, Jagmeet Singh is terrible at politics. He's not even exactly a stupid guy. He was a fairly, well acclaimed lawyer. The man is very highly educated, but he just has no instinct for politics. I think he's generally going to do fine on the debate stage, especially compared to Mark Carney, and also doing better than him in the French debate because he, in fact, speaks much better French than Mark Carney. In fact, I actually think in a strange way there is a capacity for Jagmeet Singh to be a breakout star of the debate. Is it because he has good ideas? No, it's just going to be that people haven't heard of him the entire time, and if Mark Carney underperforms, he is going to be seen as some sort of dark horse figure from the debate who said a lot of things that the media, nodded at and thought was very intellectual when it's socialist nonsense. But again, if Carney ends up flopping, Jagmeet Singh, for many people on the left, will look like a highly competent figure in comparison if you want more hard left politics. So let's get back to the chart. Do I think they're only going to be at 8.5%? No. Again, I think you're probably going to have these guys around 9.5. I put them at 9.5. So we're at now 99.4% of the vote. Maybe let's put the Greens a little bit further down because of the lack of candidates compared to last time. Although last time I think they even had fewer candidates. So actually, never mind. No, I'll put them back up. Let's put the NDP a little bit further down. Let's assume the pollsters are picking up on a dislike of them. But now I want to put the Bloc Québécois up a little bit more because, again, I really don't see this being an election where the Bloc completely falls apart and loses all of their seats outside of Montreal. When I say outside Montreal, they don't have any Montreal seats or outside the one they won in a by-election, but I mean all their strength is outside Montreal. I don't see them losing all of that ground that they've been gaining over the past few elections. I think they're mostly going to hold on to what they have. So let's look at this. We're going to assume the Liberal Party of Canada is going to get 41.5% of the vote, Conservatives 40, the NDP 9.2, the Greens 2, Bloc 6.1, and the PPC 0.8% of the vote. So in the previous average, they gave the Liberals 197 seats and the Conservatives 121. Now let's get the seat projections for the new mix that we've put in here. And now we get a tie ball game between the Liberals and the Conservatives of 153 to 153, with the NDP having 11 seats, the Bloc with 2, and the BQ with 25. Now, reminder that this wouldn't even really be enough for Carney to have a functional minority if he demanded that he stay on as prime minister because he won the popular vote and has the same amount of seats as the Conservatives. But he wouldn't be able to get anything done because even with the NDP and the Greens, he is still short of a majority. And the Bloc Québécois have made their entire brand the fact they don't want the Liberals to be in power anymore because obviously the Liberals are actually a massive threat to the Bloc's brand at this point. The Bloc has been having its vote taken away by the Liberals, so by working with the Liberals, they would just be doing the same thing that Jagmeet Singh had been doing since 2019, making themselves utterly irrelevant by capitulating to the party that's currently eating away at their support base. So 153 to 153. But let's say the Conservatives can do a little bit better than just 40%, and the Liberals do a little bit worse. Let's bump it down to 41 to 40.5. Again, this is 99.6% of the vote allocated, around a realistic amount for all the major parties. What do we get coming out of this? We now have 160 for the Conservatives to 145 for the Liberals, 11 for the NDP still, 1 for the Greens, and 26 for the Bloc Québécois. Honestly, I actually might bump that up a little bit for the Greens because I actually assume their guy in Guelph will be able to hold on to a seat as well as Elizabeth May. And that gets us to 159 to 144. It actually takes one from the Conservatives there, so this is being pretty fair in my opinion. But yeah, I'm not trying to say like based on tinkering around because you've seen that I've had to put the Conservative bar up and the Liberal bar down. Again, I don't feel like I am wish casting here because I think the polls have been heavily leaning towards the Liberals in an unrealistic fashion, and this simulator is based on that aggregation out there and only giving you a range of a couple points up or down. Considering that this is giving the Conservatives very close to a majority with a actually trailing popular vote amount is really good news for the Conservatives. And again, I think these guys will actually be able to work with the Bloc Québécois if push comes to shove and Poilievre falls short of a majority by even 15 seats or so. You can have the Bloc work with them. Don't touch equalization, don't touch a few other items, cut taxes, do some other basic stuff. And you can probably actually then translate that minority government in this election into a majority sometime in 2026 or 2027. This is what happened with Stephen Harper. He didn't need to win a majority in 2006 or 2008. He just basically needed to make the case that he was on the inside track of what Canadians wanted, was able to push through some of his legislation in those first two terms, and then once his opposition got too uppity, he could say, give me the full majority, and eventually Canadians did give it to him. So again, I assumed well before this, if the Conservatives even wanted a minority government, they would have to be beating the Liberals 43% or 41% to like 38 or 39. They would have to actually beat the Liberals by 3 points just to get a minority government. Now we see that the Conservatives could get a minority government with actually less of the vote than the Liberals have. Actually, let's just see if I can screw around. Can I actually get a Conservative majority out of this based on the current rates? Can we do this? Can we actually do it? I'm just very curious at this point. Let's say the PPC collapses all the way down to 0.5%. No, it's really hard at this point to actually come out with get an outcome like that. But I'll link that down in the description below as well as pinned at the top of the comments. You guys can play around with that. I think, again, this is demonstrating that there has been a fundamental realignment in Canadian politics. That the Conservatives are obviously still going to be doing well in Alberta and Saskatchewan. And while they might actually drop a seat or two in those provinces, they may well then more than make up for it in southwestern Ontario, in certain parts of the GTA, in certain parts of Quebec, in Atlantic Canada, and in British Columbia, in those working class neighborhoods, especially Winnipeg, a heavy union province and a heavy union city. the Conservatives have been getting all of the private sector labor unions endorsing them. I don't think any of them have actually endorsed the NDP or the Liberals outside of those white collar public sector unions like QP and whatnot. So look up, guys. I think it's actually very hopeful for the Conservatives right now. And again, we are talking about all of this pre-debate. If Poilievre can put Carney in a corner, he doesn't need to, again, pants the guy and push him off the stage. He just needs to basically demonstrate that this guy is kind of a bit of a slouch. He's not very confident. I can best him in a debate. Doesn't mean, again, he has to dunk on the guy, but if he can look more confident, more assertive, and like he has more definite plans that appeal to the base values of Canadians, he can absolutely start punching up 2 or 3 points in the polls and be in this winning position. And again, a winning position only requires the Conservatives to win like 155 seats, 157 seats, and have the Liberals come around like 140 or 137, something like that. So, anyways, that should be it for this video today, guys. Hopefully you don't mind me sitting there playing around with charts and kind of talking about non-news items, but I always find the stats interesting, and I do know a bunch of you do find the stats interesting, similar to myself. So anyways, like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, let me know what you think the actual percentage outcome is going to be between the Liberals and Conservatives on Election Day, and I'll see you guys all next time.